see, which I actually passed by in Tokyo, is a tall office building with a famous restaurant at the top of the building. That's where they are going. They're going to dine Japanese style. Important to understand that 3 of the men are the guests of the other men. And there is a young fellow who is the assistant to one of the senior people. He carries the briefcases and papers and so on. Preliminarily, what is your understanding of social status within Japanese culture between the really young and the much older? How would you preliminarily describe it? And you and I can draw from our experience, but I just want to get a sense of whether you have any notion of what it's like. What would you say?
It's always reverence for the older.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah, it's still true. The younger people do not act in any way that older people would perceive as rebellious. It's true that there are many young people that are renegades. There's no question about that going on in all societies. Now, all right, we can go ahead and get started. And I'm going to do this in 2 parts because the scenes logically break into 2 pieces. What just happened? What did you notice? It's bold.
What somebody would order and then I'll order the same thing.
None of the guests were going to order before the host. And only after the host ordered did the guest order for what they wanted, and they all ordered the same thing. Now, whether that would happen for real, I cannot say. It's probably a bit overstated about conformity in Japanese culture. Now, I stopped it deliberately because watch what the young fellow does. Also, did you notice that what was at the end of the table in the big vase? Did you happen to understand what that was? Do you know what it is?
I see it.
Okay. It's chrysanthemums. It's a big display of chrysanthemums, which is an important flower in Japanese culture. I can't remember the meaning of it, but it has a certain meaning. Now, what is your reading of the young guy? Is he a conformist? Say it. You don't have any fear?
When he sat down and opened the menu that he wasn't, so I started flipping through it. It didn't seem like he was doing the same that all the other men were doing.
Okay. The menu is also in French, and he can read French, as you will discover. It's hard to see the menu on the screen, but it is in French. Well, let's see what he does and what the subsequent reaction is. I hit the record button a moment ago. Now, do you see the contrast between what the older men were doing and what the young guy does? He completely deviates from what the older men do, causing his boss to his left to develop a nervous twitch. He was so stressed, and they look in disbelief at the fact that the young fellow has not only ordered something vastly different, but is so completely well informed about the proper wine to have with it. If this makes you hungry, by the way, I know what some of that food is, like escargot and pastry, snails and pastry. It just sounds so delicious. The snails are good, by the way. They're real tasty little buggers, as long as they don't move around too much. Okay, now we're going to go to a slightly different place in the restaurant, where I think the shot starts with. Yeah, I hope I have it on this tape. The shot starts with what looks like a Western man ordering and receiving his soup. And then it pans to a group of young women and an instructor. Now, I'm not trying to make any critical commentary at all about Japanese culture, but do you think Japanese people slurp their noodles? No. You don't think so? What?
You can.
Yeah, they do. Yeah. Now, this by the way, is a bit overstated. Okay? And notice what happened. The instructor is trying to teach these young women to eat with a fork, eat the spaghetti with a fork and a spoon, which is the Western style, and curl it on the spoon, but draw the noodles into your mouth, but don't suck on them. Don't make any noise. If you have to draw them in a bit, you don't make any noise doing it. Then they have the contrast of the Westerner sitting there eating his noodles and sucking them in at high speed. Now, it's true they do suck on the noodles and make noise, not that loudly. And I went to a noodle shop in Tokyo because I love these noodles. And I said, now what am I going to do? Because I was familiar with the film, obviously. I said, what do I do? And I'm the only Westerner in the entire shop. And this is like on a busy, like the Ginza, busy street in Tokyo. And I started to eat the noodles. And I can use chopsticks in a limited way. I'm not, and that's how they would normally eat them, is with chopsticks. And I started to eat, and clearly I'm a Westerner, and all the others are Japanese. And within 5 minutes, I was slurping my noodles. I just couldn't resist doing it. I didn't do it this way, because I knew that was an exaggeration on the part of the director. But wouldn't you agree that it's considered polite?
Well, when you eat with chopsticks, there's really no way to wrap it around your fork. So.
Yeah, the scene that's in the Bizflix is slightly different. You familiar with the film Mr. Baseball at all? There's a Bizflix scene from it, but there's another scene later in the film where Tom Selleck's character, he goes to Japan. He's traded to the Chunichi Dragons baseball team. And he goes to his girlfriend's parents' house for a traditional dinner where you have to sit on the floor. And when Japanese people sit on the floor, they're able to bring their legs in such a way that they're comfortable because they're accustomed to doing it. There's a little bit smaller frame than we are. And you know how tall Tom Selleck is. Well, his knees are up against his chin, practically. And then he starts to eat. And he makes a big cultural error. He takes the chopstick and sticks them vertically into his rice bowl. Now, he didn't know that. What I'm after here a little bit is the whole business of some pre-departure training that you get about the culture that you're going to visit. In every example, from Trina all the way across the room that you gave about what you were not prepared in advance for the heavy traffic in Cairo, for the nature of things that you saw in Spain and so on. Okay, I think we'll quit a bit early. There's not much left to talk about here. And then, as I said, next week we'll take all the Harvey and Allen readings that are assigned for next week, plus the ones that were for the first 2 weeks, and we'll talk about them together as a group. Okay.